Today, former President Donald Trump discussed one of the biggest pieces of the First Amendment, the freedom of speech, and his fight to change Section 230. Joining me now to weigh in, political analyst and host of Mark Halperin's Focus Group right here on Newsmax TV, Mark Halperin himself. Also with us is a partner at Dillon Law Group, Ron Coleman. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. Ron, we're going to begin with you as an attorney. You know, this is a pretty big lawsuit being filed by the former president today. Thousands of people are set to join this lawsuit. Notably, many people who have been victimized, censored by big tech giants in the past. Question, aren't these private companies legally able to discriminate and silence conservatives on their platforms? And couldn't that be what Trump is trying to force them to admit?
I think they've all but admitted it by now. I don't think it's anything but, I wouldn't even call it an open secret. It's true that when they testify before Congress, they deny that. Things that look like unequal treatment of conservatives are called glitches, but the cat is really out of the bag. Congress has not functioned in a very long time, and hearings of this nature have not been held. I heard, you know, the suggestion that perhaps at least getting the social media companies to acknowledge that they're treating conservatives differently from the way they're treating liberals is some kind of intermediate goal. They could or they could not. I'm not sure. I think your point is well taken, that they would probably rather not have to make that admission, but I think it's just one click away from where they are now.
All right, Mark, let's talk about the politics on this. Officially going after well-known left-wing constituencies like the big social media giants. How does it play on with both bases, the left and the right?
Well, the right loves it. You know, I think this suit has as great a chance of succeeding as I do of becoming a TikTok influencer, which is to say not very much. But it does, you know, you see already not just the former president, but the party committees fundraising off of it. There is understandable and justified outrage on the right about the unequal treatment. It's not an open secret. It's just open. It's nothing secretive about it. They've become as captive to woke culture and their employees and their political outlook as lots of other of our institutions. They are private companies. I don't think the suit will succeed. I do think as a society, we have to grapple with the power of these companies. The president's suit, former president's suit, says they're nation states. I think they basically are, but they're not going to get the relief in court. They're going to have to get it politically, and they're going to have to get it by forming their own companies that prove that conservative social platforms can be just as powerful, or at least powerful enough.
Right, and they're vulnerable on the antitrust. I believe that to my core. They're vulnerable, these left-wing monopolies on that score. Mark, I want to stick with you. The ongoing battle to defeat critical race theory. Over at MSNBS, journalist Chris Rufo was part of this debate. Listen to what he had to say.
You have to wake up. This is not just conservatives and Republicans. In fact, the greatest opponents of critical race theory in education are liberal, center-left liberals in places like San Francisco, Los Angeles, and New York City, hardly bastions of conservatism, and also racial minorities, particularly Asian Americans, who've lobbied against it in schools all over this country. It's not a typical black-white issue. That's not the division here.
Mm-hmm. So, Mark, the Democrats have the unions, the teachers' unions in their back pockets. But with the left-leaning parents choosing Dr. King's teachings of a colorblind society and opposing CRT's hyper-focus on skin color, don't Democrats and the unions run the risk of losing major support here?
I think they do, and I think there are people within the Democratic Party who are worried about it. Chris, you are my friend, as is the person who hosted that discussion, Joe Scarborough. So I think it's good to tip the hat to them to host that conversation, because that's not the kind of conversation you would normally expect to hear on a place like CNN or most of MSNBC. And it's testament to the fact that there's power in the ideas of those parents, of those activists, of those intellectuals who are saying that this is not the way our society should go. This is not the kind of discussion we should be having. The teachers' unions, I think, are going to be increasingly isolated. And I think it is one of the greatest signs we've seen of a backlash against this culture.
Well, thank you very much. Ron, I owe you a question. Thank you very much, man, for the time to both of you, Mark Halperin and Ron Coleman.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, where real news for real people.